If your brain abandons every goal that you set, it's not because you lack willpower. It's because you're likely following a system that's not designed for your brain wiring. Now, I remember joining my first business mentorship, and they pressed me to set my 3-year revenue goal and then my 1-year revenue goal. And I sat there feeling completely disconnected from the task, like I was just plucking numbers out of the sky. But I did it anyway. I ticked the box. I wrote down some impressive sounding figures, and then I swiftly forgot about them. I found that piece of paper a couple of months ago, and I realized that I hadn't looked at it once in 3 years. And truth be told, this wasn't a one-off. I once spent $2,500 on a system expert to build me out a custom Notion workspace, specifically for my business and my goals. And I used it for exactly 1 week before I completely abandoned it. For years, I thought I was completely broken. Everyone around me seemed to have no problem sticking to their goals, following their plans. Meanwhile, I'm over here wondering, what the fuck is wrong with me? Why is it so difficult for me to stick to them? But here's what I discovered. I wasn't broken. I was just using the wrong approach for my brain type. And if this sounds familiar to you, the chances are that you're likely making the same mistakes that I was. Now today I'm going to share the personal journey that led me to understand why this happens, what I discovered about how my brain actually works compared to most people, why this changes everything about goal setting, and most importantly, what we can actually do instead that works. But before I dive into all of that, let me address what you might be thinking at this point. Great, another person telling me I need to fix my goal setting approach. I've already tried everything already. Trust me, I get it. I spent years and honestly, fucking thousands of pounds on courses, coaches, systems, all promising to solve some form of goal setting problem. I tried SMART goals, vision boards, accountability partners, habit tracking apps, spreadsheets. You name it, I have likely tried it. And for a while, I'd think, this is it. This is the system that's finally going to work for me. I'd get excited. I'd see some initial progress. And then the same pattern would repeat. Within weeks, I'd lose interest and abandon whatever system it was that I tried to use. Now, it wasn't until I discovered something fundamental about how my brain works, something that completely changed my understanding of why I struggled with setting and achieving goals, that everything finally clicked. And once I understood this, I was able to develop an approach that actually works with my brain instead of me constantly fighting against it. So if you've tried everything and nothing seems to be sticking, then keep on watching. Because what I'm about to share might just be the missing piece that you've been looking for all this time. Right, let me tell you about the journey that led to me to understand what was really going on. Truth be told, my self-talk had become critical. I was recognizing this pattern, spending thousands on systems that I'd abandon, setting goals that I'd forget, romanticizing ideas that I'd never touch again, and I kept thinking that I was wasting my money and my potential. And to a degree, I was. I thought there weren't really any consequences to this behavior aside from that. But I was wrong. I came to realize that the final 2 years of my previous business were completely stagnant. I knew traditional goal setting didn't work for me, but I didn't replace it with anything else, which meant that I had no North Star to be working towards. Don't get me wrong, I was busy all the time, and this is something that I hear from hunter brains constantly, but I wasn't productive. And there is a huge difference between being busy and making progress. When you have a hunter brain, you're driven by an internal motor that is always running. You're always going to be busy, but that doesn't mean that you're moving in the right direction. So there's a clear distinction that we need to make there. The truth is, this has become incredibly frustrating for my partner too, which is slightly embarrassing to admit. 1 week I'd be telling her about some new initiative I was excited about, and a couple of weeks later, I'd be telling her about something completely different, having completely forgotten about the first thing that I told her. She'd remind me of that previous initiative I'd started, and this happened more than once. It made me uncomfortable to think that she thought I was really flaky and ultimately full of shit. During this period of time, it is safe to say that I had a couple of identity crises. I genuinely wondered if I was cut out for business at all. Why did it feel so difficult for me to just set goals and then go and fucking achieve them? That's when I went down what became a 6-month hyper-focused rabbit hole, trying to understand why my brain was working the way that it was. I even went through the process of getting an ADHD diagnosis. And just starting that process helped me to understand a lot about how my brain actually works. And that's when I discovered the concept of hunter versus farmer brains. And that light bulb moment was honestly liberating. It helped me understand why I'd been struggling with challenges my entire life, but also why I was able to excel in other areas. I finally came to realize that my brain wasn't broken. There was no defect that I needed to fix. I just had a different operating system. Now, around this type of time, I started having conversations with my clients, and they all seemed to resonate with this. As I started to describe what a hunter brain was and the traits and symptoms of one, they all started to raise their hand and be like, fuck, that's me. I struggle with that as well. I then connected the dots back over the past 10 years. About 80% of my clients had hunter brains too. It was far more common than I thought. And if you're watching this thinking, this sounds exactly like me, there is a good chance that you have a hunter brain too. And I've created a simple 2-minute assessment that will tell you exactly which brain type you are. I will also then give you some strategies based upon your brain type to help you improve the results that you're getting both in your business and your life overall. Just head to the link in the description and take the test. Trust me, it will change everything for you. So once I understood what a hunter brain was, I realized why traditional goal setting was never going to work for me, and expecting it to was completely unrealistic. But let me paint you a picture of what I mean by hunter versus farmer brains, because the difference between the two is profound. I want you to picture a traditional farmer from centuries ago. Every spring they'd plant their crops in neat organized rows. Day after day, month after month, they'd tend to those crops with steady and consistent effort. They'd water them, weed them, protect them from pests. They could delay gratification for months, knowing that if they stuck to the routine, the harvest would come in fall. They planned seasons ahead, saved seeds for next year, and built their entire life around a predictable, systematic process. Now I want you to picture a hunter from the same era. They'd wake up and they'd scan the environment. Where are the opportunities for me today? They'd get excited by fresh tracks that they can see, a new scent on the wind, movement that they can hear and see in the distance. And when they spotted prey, they'd hyper-focus completely, chase it for hours if needed, using every ounce of energy and creativity to make sure that they succeed. But once the hunt was over, they'd need to rest, recover, and then scan for the next opportunity, likely tomorrow. They couldn't just do the same thing every day. They had to adapt to whatever the environment presented to them. So here's the crucial insight. Both strategies work. Both are ultimately essential, but they do require completely different approaches to success. So let's bring this back to today. If you have a farmer brain, you can set a 5-year business plan and chip away at it methodically. You can stick to a morning routine for years. You can save money consistently, build systems slowly, and trust that steady progress is going to get you there. But if you have a hunter brain, you're scanning for opportunities constantly. You get excited by new possibilities, new challenges, fresh problems to solve. You can hyper-focus for 15 hours straight when something captures your interest, but you literally cannot force yourself to work on boring, repetitive tasks. It's kind of like when two of the opposite ends of a magnet are facing each other. Doing those boring tasks physically repels you from them. You need variety, urgency, and emotional stimulation to perform at your best. And here's the problem. About 80% of the population are farmer brains, which means about 80% of all business and performance advice is created by farmer brains for farmer brains. Think about it for a second. Smart goals, 5-year plans, daily habits, systematic routines. All of this assumes that you can maintain steady, consistent motivation towards far distant outcomes. But for hunter brains, this advice feels like torture, because it goes against every instinct that we have. And ultimately, it comes down to 3 key differences in how we're wired. Let me walk you through them one at a time. First, we have what's called time blindness. Hunter brains struggle to connect emotionally to future rewards. And here's a simple example. If I offered you £100 today, or £200 in 6 months, most hunter brains would take the £100 today. Not because we're bad at maths, we're idiots, or we don't understand compound interest, but because our brains literally cannot create an emotional connection to that future reward. It's too far away. Second, hunter brains have a low dopamine baseline. Our brains are constantly seeking stimulation and meaning. So generic goals like build a 7-figure business aren't enough to fire up our motivation center. We need something that actually excites us, something that creates internal urgency and emotional engagement. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself in that same situation that I did. You're going to set a goal because you feel like it's what you should be doing. Maybe I should hit 7 figures. And then because there's no urgency, emotional attachment, or excitement involved, you're very quickly going to forget about it and end up abandoning it. And finally, number 3, hunter brains are emotionally sensitive when it comes to motivation. Logic alone doesn't create enough buy-in for us. Emotion is our ignition switch for action. Without that emotional charge, our brains simply won't allocate attention or energy to the goal that we're trying to achieve. This is why all of those traditional goal-setting systems failed me. They were designed for farmer brains who can be motivated by logic and long-term thinking. If I'm currently earning 10k a month, then surely, logically, I should just be aiming for 12k a month. But the truth is that is not how my brain works. And the likelihood is, it's not how yours does either. At a certain point, I learned that money no longer motivates me. So just continuously being on this hedonic treadmill of setting new revenue targets doesn't interest or excite me. So if I was to set a goal like that, I likely would just abandon it and not do it. So the key here for hunter brains is that if it doesn't feel exciting or urgent right now, it is not getting done. Now I want you to understand that this isn't a character flaw. This isn't something that needs to be fixed. This is just how hunter brains are designed. We're not broken. We just ultimately need a different approach. One that works like a hunt, not like farming. So if traditional goal setting doesn't work for hunter brains, what does? Well, what I'm about to show you completely changed everything for me. And it does for my clients too. Instead of thinking, I need to climb Mount Everest every morning, I started thinking about getting to base camp by the end of what I call a hunt. Essentially a 6 to 12 week sprint focused on completing a specific project. Let me give you a concrete example. So I'm not just talking in metaphors. One of my goals for this year is to help as many hunter brains as possible build a business and lifestyle that is in alignment with their brain type. Now, that is a pretty macro and large goal. Exactly the kind of abstract goal that would have paralyzed me before. But I broke it down into a hunt. Relaunched the Hunter Brain podcast and YouTube channel. That hunt is now complete. You're watching or listening to the results of that right now. The next hunt is already underway. Create 12 solo episodes and 6 interviews over the next 12-week period. Because I've got a deadline of 12 weeks on it, there is an element of urgency involved. And when there is urgency involved, it gives me dopamine, which is ultimately the thing that stimulates my motivation center to engage with a goal. Now, in addition to this, you'll notice that it's very tangible and input focused. There is very little abstraction, because with hunter brains, if there is abstraction, there is a lack of clarity. And that then goes hand in hand with procrastination and paralysis. So when you're creating your hunts, you want them to be as tangible and as specific as possible. Almost like a to-do list. Now, some people say to me, yeah, but Jack, what about these longer term goals? Well, here is a little insight into the way that I think. I don't believe that we need to plan for anything beyond 12 months. The truth is, so many people from that first mentorship that I mentioned earlier, who completed that 3-year planning exercise that I mentioned, they are no longer in business. The truth that nobody is going to want to tell you is that no one actually has a clue what is going to happen after this next 12 months. And honestly, hunter brains don't really care about 3-year plans. It's too far away for us to be excited or stimulated by it. So you might as well just focus on the next 12 months. Don't get too caught up in what happens after that. Have a few macro goals that you want to achieve and then break them down into 6 to 12 week hunts that are very specific. Like I say, it wants to be an action or project list. And for me, I call it a kill list. This approach combines urgency and action with clarity and direction. You have your North Star, which are those few macro goals for the year, but you're working towards them through these focused time-bound hunts that create the emotional engagement and dopamine hits that your hunter brain desperately craves. Now, the difference this made was fucking incredible. Instead of spinning my wheels, being busy without being productive, I was making clear, measurable progress towards things that actually mattered. And I could clearly link them back to my North Star whenever I needed to. Each hunt had a defined endpoint, so I got that satisfaction of completion when it was done. And then I got to design the next hunt, which gave me the novelty and stimulation I needed to stay motivated. For the first time in my business career, I wasn't just surviving. I was actually building something meaningful in a way that works with my brain instead of fighting against it. So there you have it. If you have a brain that abandons every goal you set, it's not because you have a lack of willpower. It's because you're using a system that is likely designed for a different brain type to the one that you have. And here's what I bet is happening right now. Your hunter brain is probably already generating a dozen of new ideas about how you could apply this sprint approach to your own goals. You're already thinking about what your next 4 to 8 hour sprint could be. But that leads to the next problem that every hunter brain faces. We are incredible at generating ideas, but we struggle to execute on any of them. We end up with 1,000 brilliant ideas likely stored on your Apple Notes, but we can never seem to follow through and turn them into reality. That is exactly what I cover in my next video here, where I talk you through the simple system that we use for executing on your ideas.